Taurus. Every long season has an ending that announces itself quietly before it announces itself loudly. And the chapter you have been living inside for far too long is ending exactly like that. In a hush, in a small change of pressure, in the barely perceptible sense that the ground beneath your feet has begun to tilt in your favor. You may not be able to point to the evidence yet. That is normal. The turning of a season always begins underground, in the roots, long before anything green breaks the surface. And what I want to tell you before we go any further is that the turn has already started. You are not waiting for it. You are standing inside its first hour. Let me speak about the season that is closing, and let me speak about it with respect, because it deserves respect, even though it was hard. You have spent a stretch of your life doing the difficult arithmetic of not enough, stretching what little there was, choosing between necessities, feeling the particular sting of watching others spend without thinking while you calculated every choice twice. That season was not a punishment, and it was not proof of any failure in you. It was a chapter, and chapters end. This one is ending now, and you are walking out of it carrying something the comfortable never got to earn. Because that lean stretch, for all its weight, was teaching you a curriculum that most wealthy people never study. You learned the true value of a thing. You learned to make something out of almost nothing, to improvise, to stretch, to build with your bare hands when the tools were missing. You learned what money is actually for, which is a wisdom that people born into ease often go their whole lives without acquiring. The hardship was not wasted. It was tuition. And the education you paid so dearly for is about to become the exact reason your abundance holds instead of slipping through your fingers. It is worth pausing here to say that the way this reading reached you was not random. And a channel like Spiritual Light Tarot has a strange habit of arriving in a person's life at the hinge point rather than in the middle of the chapter. You did not stumble onto these words during an ordinary stretch. You found them at the seam between what was and what is coming. And some part of you knew to go looking. Trust that part of you. It has better instincts than your fear gives it credit for. And it has been steering you toward this threshold for longer than you realize. So let me describe the hinge itself, the actual mechanics of how a life turns from lean to plentiful, because it rarely happens the way people imagine. Most expect the change to arrive as a single dramatic event, a windfall falling from the sky, a lottery of luck. But the real turn is subtler and more reliable than that. It begins as a shift in what you notice. Where you once scanned your world for threats and shortages, you begin almost without effort to notice openings. Opportunities that were always there but invisible to a mind trained on lack suddenly become visible. The world did not change first. Your seeing changed first, and the world followed. Watch, then, for the first sign, because it will be small and it will be easy to dismiss. It might be an unexpected offer, a conversation that goes somewhere surprising, a door that opens a crack where before there was only wall. The temptation will be to distrust it, to assume it is too minor to matter, to let the old habit of expecting little talk you out of walking through. Resist that habit. The first sign is never meant to be the whole harvest. It is meant to be the proof that the ground has thawed. Treat it as the beginning it is and follow it. There is a change coming in the way resources move around you, and it has a distinct character worth naming. For so long, money came to you in a trickle and left in a flood, always slightly less than you needed, always requiring you to chase it. That dynamic is reversing. What I sense is a turning of the current so that more begins to flow toward you than flows away. And, crucially, some of it begins to arrive without the desperate chasing. Not because you are working less, but because the effort you have already invested is finally compounding. You planted in poor seasons. The harvest does not care that the planting was hard. I want you to anticipate a sensation you may not have felt in years, or perhaps ever. And that is the strange lightness of surplus. There will come a point when the money does not all leave the moment it arrives, when something remains after the obligations are met, when for the first time there is a little left over that belongs to no bill and no emergency. That leftover is small at first, almost negligible, but do not underestimate what it does to a person's spirit. It is the first physical proof that the tide has turned, the first margin you have had to breathe inside, and it grows quietly until one day the margin is the point and the scarcity is the memory. And here is a relationship you are about to develop that you have never been able to afford before, the relationship with money that works while you rest. For your whole life, money has been something you trade your hours for, dollar by dollar, effort by effort, and the moment you stopped, the income stopped with you. That is about to change. You are entering a season where you can begin to let money multiply on its own, to put it somewhere it grows without your constant labor, to finally experience the quiet magic of resources that expand while you sleep. This is the threshold between working for money and money working for you, and you are stepping across it. Notice too that the first signs of plenty often arrive not as grand acquisitions, but as small daily mercies. And I do not want you to overlook them while waiting for something bigger. The full tank without the wince. The good coffee bought without a second thought. The small gift for someone you love, given freely because you can. These modest pleasures are not trivial. They are the texture of a life without constant fear, and they will return to you one by one, each a tiny flag planted on newly reclaimed ground. Celebrate them as they come. They are the leading edge of the abundance, and honoring the small arrivals teaches your spirit how to receive the large ones. I want to name a specific inheritance you are carrying. And I do not mean money, I mean a story. There is a narrative about scarcity that runs in your family, or in your upbringing, or in the water you grew up drinking. An unspoken agreement that people like you do not get to have much. Maybe you watched a parent struggle. Maybe you absorbed the belief that reaching too high invites punishment. That story has been living in you like an old tenant who never paid rent, and I sense you are about to evict it. You may well be the one who breaks the pattern, the first in a long line to step out of the inherited smallness and into a largeness no one before you was permitted. Consider what it means to be the one who breaks the chain, because it is a sacred and lonely and magnificent role. The people who came before you did the best they could with the doors that were open to them, and many of those doors were nailed shut by circumstances they could not control. You are living in a season with more open doors, and you carry within you the accumulated longing of everyone who wanted more and could not reach it. When you rise, you do not rise alone. You rise carrying them, and your abundance becomes a kind of restitution for every dream that got deferred in the generations behind you. Now I want to talk about a skill you have been undercharging for, or perhaps not charging for at all, because this is where a great deal of your coming wealth is hiding. There is something you do that others find valuable, something you have been giving away out of habit, out of humility, out of the quiet fear that asking for its worth would make you seem grasping. That undervaluing is the leak in the vessel. As you learn to name your worth out loud and let the number match the value, the leak seals, and you will be startled by how much was escaping through it all along. The wealth was never only about earning more. It was also about stopping the quiet giveaway. Here is something tender about the moment your relationship to asking changes, because it is more emotional than people expect. For someone who has gone without, the act of asking for more can feel almost like a betrayal of the humble person you have always been. There may be grief in it, a strange mourning for the identity of the one who never needed much, the one who made do, the one who was easy to have around because they never demanded. I want you to know that becoming a person who asks for their worth does not make you less good, it makes you honest. The world does not need your smallness. It needs your fullness, priced fairly. The channel Spiritual Light Tarot was built on the belief that the people who have gone without the longest are often the ones most ready to receive with grace, and I feel that readiness in you now, ripe and waiting. You are not going to be spoiled by abundance. You are not going to lose your soul in it. You have carried scarcity with such dignity that you will carry plenty with even more. The character that was forged in the difficult chapter is exactly the character that makes prosperity safe in your hands. And the universe, which is more discerning than we credit, has been waiting for that character to finish forming before it opened the gates. Let me describe the new capacity you are developing, the capacity to hold. Because getting money and keeping money are two different arts, and you are learning the second one now. Many people receive a windfall only to watch it evaporate because their inner container was never enlarged to match the sum. But you have spent years building discipline, restraint, and a hard-won respect for what a dollar can do. That means the abundance flowing towards you will not run through you and vanish. It will accumulate. It will settle. It will build on itself. You are not just about to receive. You are about to retain. And retention is where lasting wealth is actually made. There is an old feeling that is going to lose its grip on you. And it is the feeling of being an imposter in rooms of means. For so long, when you found yourself among people with more, a quiet voice told you that you did not belong there, that you were one wrong sentence away from being found out, that your presence was a fluke, soon to be corrected. That voice is going quiet. As your circumstances shift, you will begin to notice that you carry yourself differently in those rooms, that you stop shrinking, that you stop over-explaining, that you simply take your seat as though you were always meant to have it because you always were. The belonging was never something you lacked. It was something you had not yet claimed. I sense a guide appearing on your path, someone further along than you, someone who has already walked the road from little to plenty and can show you where the hidden steps are. It may be a person, or it may be a body of knowledge, a teacher, a source of wisdom that arrives at exactly the moment you become ready to learn what it offers. The world you are entering has its own rules, its own etiquette, its own mechanics, and you do not have to figure them all out alone. Help is coming in the form of instruction. When it appears, be humble enough to be a student again. The willingness to learn is the mark of everyone who ever crossed this particular threshold. Listen for the change in your own voice when the subject of money comes up, because it is a truer indicator of transformation than any number. There has been an apology in the way you speak about money, a flinch, a lowering of the eyes, a habit of undervaluing before anyone else could. As the shift takes hold, you will hear yourself begin to speak of it plainly, without shame, without the reflexive discount. You will state your worth as a simple fact rather than a nervous question. That steadiness in your voice is not arrogance. It is the sound of a person who has finally stopped believing they were born to go without, and the world responds to that sound with respect it never offered your apology. And here's a power you have never been able to afford. The power to say no to the wrong money. When a person is desperate, every opportunity looks like salvation, and they take what drains them because they cannot afford to refuse. But abundance grants you the luxury of discernment. You will soon be able to decline the offer that pays well but costs your soul, to walk away from the arrangement that diminishes you, to hold out for the thing that is actually right, rather than grabbing the first thing that appears. This ability to refuse is itself a form of wealth, perhaps the truest form, because it means your choices are finally your own. I sense a debt or a burden that is going to be lifted, and I want you to feel in advance the specific freedom of that release. There is a weight you have been carrying, an obligation, an owed thing that has sat on your chest and colored your sense of the future. And I sense the season ahead offering you the means to set it down for good. The day that particular weight lifts, you will feel yourself stand taller, breathe deeper, look further ahead than you have allowed yourself to look in a long time. Freedom from what you owe is its own kind of fortune, and it is one of the first gifts this turning is preparing to hand you. There is a conversation coming in which you will ask for more than you have ever dared to ask, and you will get it. A rate, a raise, a fee, a figure that would have terrified the old version of you to even speak aloud. I sense you finding the steadiness to name it plainly and then, crucially, to stay silent afterward, to let the number stand without rushing to apologize for it or negotiate against yourself. That silence after the ask is where fortunes are decided, and you are learning to hold it. The yes that comes back will teach you something permanent about your own worth, and you will never again ask for as little as you once did. And I want to speak to what your abundance will let you stand for, because money in the hands of a person with your conscience becomes something more than comfort. You have causes you care about, people you would protect, things in this world you wish you had the power to change. Scarcity kept your compassion theoretical, a wish without a lever. Wealth turns compassion into action. You will be able to fund what you believe in, to shelter who you love, to move real resources toward the good you have always wanted to do and never had the means to accomplish. This is perhaps the deepest reason the abundance is coming to someone like you. It knows what you will do with it. I sense an opportunity with an unusual shape approaching, one that will not look like the opportunities you have been trained to expect. It may involve doing something you have never done before, stepping into a role that feels a size too large, saying yes to a possibility that scares you slightly with its scope. Your instinct, honed by years of playing it safe, may be to decline, to wait until you feel ready, to defer to someone more qualified. But readiness is a myth that keeps people poor. The opportunity is not asking you to already be the person who can handle it. It is offering to make you that person. Step forward before you feel ready. That is how the leap always works. There is a particular relief I want you to anticipate because it is one of the sweetest fruits of the turn, and it is the first time you look at a price and simply do not flinch. For so long, every purchase has been shadowed by calculation, every want weighed against every need, every small pleasure taxed by guilt. There is coming a day when you will reach for something and the old flinch will not arrive, when the arithmetic will fall silent, when you will simply be able to have the thing. That moment, small as it sounds, will bring tears to your eyes because it will be the body finally believing what the mind has been trying to tell it. The famine is over. I want to speak to the guilt that sometimes rides alongside new abundance because it can ambush a person who has known hardship, and I do not want it to steal your joy. When you begin to have more than the people around you had, more than your family had, more than the version of you from the hard years could have imagined, a strange guilt can surface, a feeling that you have somehow abandoned your own kind by rising. Let me dissolve that. You do not honor the people who struggled by struggling alongside them forever. You honor them by breaking free and then reaching back. Your rising is not a betrayal. It is a rescue mission, and you are both the rescued and the rescuer. Let me trace what tends to happen once the first income shift lands, because it rarely stays singular. The first new stream tends to reveal a second. The confidence from one success loosens the grip of fear enough that you begin to see other avenues you were previously too anxious to pursue. Wealth, once it begins, has a way of teaching you its own logic, showing you how it wants to grow, revealing paths that were invisible from inside scarcity. You will not have to force this. You will simply notice one day that the single lucky break has quietly become a diversified and living thing, feeding itself, expanding on its own momentum. There is a recognition coming too, and I want to separate it cleanly from the money because they arrive together, but they are not the same gift. People are going to start seeing your value in a way they did not before. The same qualities that were overlooked when you had nothing become suddenly visible and admired the moment your circumstances begin to shift. It is unjust, in a way, that the world so often waits for external proof before it grants internal respect. But that is how it moves, and it is about to move in your favor. Let the recognition come. You do not have to pretend you do not enjoy being finally seen. I sense you will soon be in a position to be the generous one, And I want you to savor this in advance because it may be the single most healing part of the whole transformation. There is a specific joy, unlike any other, in being the one who picks up the check, who covers the shortfall, who says, do not worry about it and means it. For someone who spent years on the receiving end of other people's mercy, or worse, on the receiving end of no mercy at all. The day you get to be the source of the ease rather than the one who needs it will feel like a wound closing. You have been on the thin end of generosity long enough. Your turn to be the fountain is coming. Let me address the fear that this is all too good, that I am describing a life meant for other people, that surely the pattern of your existence has been set and this reading is a beautiful cruelty. I understand why that fear is there. When a person has been disappointed enough times, hope itself starts to feel like a setup. But patterns are not destinies. A pattern is simply what has happened until now, and until now is not forever. The evidence of your past is not evidence of your future, because the variable that was missing has just entered the equation, and the variable was never luck. It was your own permission, finally granted. Think about how much of your struggle was never about capability, because you were always capable. And it was never about worthiness, because you were always worthy. So much of it came down to a single locked door in your own mind, a belief that the good life belonged to a different category of person. That door is unlocking now, not through force, but through a quiet exhaustion of the lie. And on the other side of it is not some foreign paradise, but simply the life that was always meant for you, waiting patiently for you to believe you were allowed to walk in. There is a decision approaching, and I want you to be awake for it, because it is the kind of decision that quietly determines everything downstream. It will present itself as a choice between the safe, familiar smallness and the frightening, expansive unknown. Every cell trained by scarcity will vote for the safe option, because scarcity always mistakes familiarity for safety. But the expansive choice, the one that makes your heart beat faster with a fear that is really excitement in disguise, is the one that leads to the life we are talking about. When the fork appears, choose the direction that scares you in the good way. That fear is not a warning, it is a compass. I want to name the momentum you will begin to feel, because its arrival is one of the surest signs the turn is real. There is a phase in every transformation when things stop requiring so much effort, when the pushing gives way to a kind of pull, when the same work that used to yield nothing suddenly yields fruit. It can be disorienting, this ease, after so long spent straining. You may even distrust it, waiting for the difficulty to return. But the ease is not a trick. It is what the far side of the threshold feels like, and you are crossing into it. Let yourself trust the pull. You have earned the right to stop straining. Let me speak to the way your environment will begin to reflect the change, because the outer world keeps an honest record of the inner one. The people you spend time with, the conversations you find yourself in, the standards you begin to hold, the things you will no longer tolerate, all of these will start to rise. You will find yourself outgrowing situations that once seemed permanent, releasing relationships that were built on your smallness, gravitating toward people who see the version of you that is emerging rather than the version you are leaving behind. This is not disloyalty. It is growth. And growth always requires leaving some things gently on the shore. There is a specific dream you have been quietly nursing. Something you want so badly that you barely let yourself want it, because wanting it and not getting it would hurt too much. You have kept it in a locked drawer of your heart, taking it out only in private, telling no one. I want you to take it out now and look at it in full light, because the reading holds it as reachable. The thing you assumed was permanently out of your league is coming into range. Do not shrink the dream to protect yourself from disappointment. The disappointment you have been bracing against is not the future, the reading shows. Let the dream be as big as it actually is. I sense help arriving from an unexpected direction, and I want you to keep your eyes open for it, because it may not come wearing the face you expect. Sometimes the person who changes your fortune is not the one you have been courting, but a stranger, an outsider, someone who appears at the edge of your life and turns out to hold a key. Sometimes the break comes through a channel you had written off, a connection you undervalued, a door you assumed led nowhere. Stay open. The transformation you are entering is not going to unfold according to your plan. And that is a mercy, because your plan was built from the imagination of scarcity, and what is coming is larger than that imagination could design. Let me offer you a truth about how identity and money are entangled, because this is the deepest mechanism of the whole shift. You do not attract what you want. You attract what you believe you are. For years, some buried part of you believed you were a person who goes without, and so faithfully, life kept confirming that belief. What is changing now is not primarily your circumstances, but your sense of who you are. And as that self-image rises from lack to plenty, your circumstances have no choice but to follow, because the outer life is always, eventually, a mirror of the inner verdict. You are revising the verdict. The reflection cannot stay the same. Consider how differently you will move through the world once the constant background fear of money goes quiet. That fear has been costing you more than you know, occupying a portion of your mind at every moment, coloring every decision, tightening every interaction. When it lifts, you will discover reserves of creativity and warmth and courage that were there all along but buried under the noise of worry. You will become more generous, more playful, more daring, more fully yourself, because the enormous energy that went into managing scarcity will finally be freed to build the life you actually want. The wealth does not just add, it releases. Let me speak about time, because it is the wealth beneath the wealth, the thing all the money is secretly for. What you are really buying as your resources grow is the return of your own hours. The time to sleep without an alarm shaped by desperation. The time to linger over a meal. The time to make something slowly and well instead of frantically and cheap. The time to be present with the people you love instead of forever elsewhere, chasing the next dollar. Money, at its best, is congealed time waiting to be spent back into life, and you are about to begin buying back the hours that scarcity has been stealing from you for years. There is an old wound around money that I sense is ready to heal. A specific memory of humiliation or lack that still stings when you brush against it. Perhaps a moment when you could not afford something you desperately needed. Perhaps a time you were made to feel small over money. Judged, dismissed, refused. That wound has been shaping your choices from the shadows, and I sense the season ahead offering it a chance to close. Not through revenge, but through a gentle overwriting. As the version of you who has enough finally reaches back to comfort the version who went without. You are about to become the answer to your own old prayer. I sense a skeptic in your life, someone who did not believe you could do this, who quietly assumed you would always be exactly where you have been. And I sense that person becoming a believer, not because you argued them into it, but because the evidence of your rising will become impossible to deny. There is a particular grace available to you here. The grace of winning that doubter over rather than gloating, of letting your changed life speak so clearly that their old skepticism simply dissolves into something closer to awe. You do not need to prove them wrong with words. Your life is about to make the argument for you. Consider what the lifting of money stress will do for the people you love, because scarcity does not weigh on one person alone. It presses on every relationship in a household. The tension of not enough has a way of seeping into love, of turning tender people short with each other, of making every conversation about the future a quiet negotiation of fear. As that pressure lifts, watch what happens to your relationships. Watch the softening. Watch how much easier it becomes to be kind when the terror of lack is no longer standing in the room. Your abundance is not only going to change your bank account, it is going to change the emotional weather of your closest bonds. There is an idea you have dismissed, a possibility you waved off as unrealistic, impractical, not for someone like you, and I sense that this very idea may be the vehicle, the thing you talked yourself out of. The venture you assumed was too ambitious. The path you glanced at and looked away from because wanting it felt dangerous. I am asking you to look at it again. Sometimes the door we are most afraid to open is the one with our name already carved above it. And the reading suggests that the dream you filed under someday may in fact be the practical route to the transformation the title promises. Do not underestimate the idea you have been quietly protecting yourself from. Even in plenty, I sense you will keep your feet on the ground, and this is worth honoring because it is precisely what will make your wealth durable. You are not the kind of person who forgets where they came from the moment fortune arrives. You will keep the habits that served you, the respect for a dollar, the refusal to waste, the memory of the lean years that keeps you humble and wise. This groundedness is not a limitation. It is the ballast that keeps a rising ship from capsizing. And it means that when the abundance comes, it will not turn you into a stranger to yourself. You will remain recognizably, admirably you, only unburdened. And I sense in the longer arc of this that you are about to teach a different story than the one you were taught. Whatever scarcity you inherited, whatever fear about money was passed down to you like an heirloom no one wanted, you now have the chance to hand something else to the people who come after you. A different relationship with abundance. A belief that having is allowed. A model of a person who broke the old pattern and lived to show that it could be broken. This may be the most lasting wealth of all, the kind measured, not in what you accumulate, but in what you make newly possible for everyone who watches you rise. I want to describe the quiet dignity of the wealth that is coming to you, because it will not be the loud, garish, kind. What I sense for you is not the wealth that needs to be seen, the kind that shouts and clutters and proves. It is the calmer, deeper kind, the wealth of options, of security, of a life with margin in it. The freedom to breathe, the ability to weather the unexpected without terror, the peace of knowing there is enough. This is the richness that actually changes a person's days, and it is quieter and better than the fantasy version, and it is precisely the version arriving at your door. Everything Spiritual Light Tarot hopes to leave a person with comes down to a single conviction, and I want to place it in your hands as we near the end. The conviction that the difficult chapter was never the whole book, that the lean season was always a passage and never a destination, and that the wealth arriving is not a stranger's fortune wandering in by accident, but the harvest of every hard thing you survived. You are not going from broke to rich by luck. You are going from broke to rich by the slow, faithful ripening of a life that was always heading here, even in the years it did not look like it. So let me leave you standing at the threshold with clear eyes. Behind you is the chapter of stretching and counting and making do, and it is closing, and you may say goodbye to it with gratitude rather than bitterness, because it made you into someone who can hold what is coming. Ahead of you is a season of arrival, of receiving, of finally having the margin to breathe, and the means to be generous, and the freedom to reach for the dream you kept locked away. The turn has begun. You are already inside its first hour, and everything I have described is not a distant possibility, but a homecoming already underway, walking toward you as surely as you are walking toward it. Step through. The lean years are behind you now. Let yourself be rich in every sense the word can hold.